Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Miller,
And I am Carly Commando.
and this presentation will cover our program evaluation of the Kutztown University LGBTQ Resource Center. In this video, we'll be discussing three main components: a summary of our interview with the program supervisor, a detailed overview of the action plan we developed based on our needs assessment, and a reflection on what went well throughout this process and what we could have done differently.
We began this project on a cold, rainy day at Boxwood House, which is a little sweet historic house across the street from Old Main. And that is where the LGBTQ Resource Center is located. So we started by conducting an interview with Christine Price, who is the director of the Resource Center, along with Jerry Shearer, who serves as the Chief Diversity Officer, and Lisbeth Mora, a graduate assistant, who is also in our program with us, so you might know her.
We really wanted to get a better sense of the center's mission, what they offer, how they evaluate their work, and what is working well versus what could be improved. One of the biggest themes that came up right away was the idea of visibility and belonging, which is the center's overall mission. The LGBTQ Resource Center really serves two purposes. It creates a supportive space for the queer students, and it also helps educate the broader campus and promote allyship. Their programming reflects that too. They offer smaller community-based events within the center, as well as larger campus-wide events like Pride Fest, Pride Prom, drag shows, and the Gender and Sexual Minorities Conference. When we talked about strengths, the space itself kept coming up. It's seen as really welcoming and affirming, and for a lot of students, just having a place to simply exist, study, or connect with others is huge. Services like the binder fitting program and free hygiene resources were also highlighted as really meaningful. They also collaborate a lot with other campus departments and community organizations, which really helps expand their reach. Something that stood out to us was how intentional they are about evaluating their work. They're actually looking at what's working and what isn't. So they use both quantitative data and qualitative data, like tracking attendance, monitoring service usage, and collecting student feedback through surveys each semester. They also estimate around 2,000 visits per semester, although that includes repeat visits, which still gives a sense of how active the space is. We also learned that there are a lot of stakeholders involved in shaping the center's work, including students, student organizations, staff, faculty, and community partners. So it really is a collaborative effort. At the same time, they were very honest about some challenges that they face. One of the biggest was outreach and visibility, which again is a big deal because their mission is about visibility and belonging. So what this means is some students don't discover the center until later in their college experience. There are also limitations with staffing and funding and accessibility concerns related to the building itself. For example, it does not have a functioning elevator. The conference room that we met at is located on the second floor. So while there are ramps to get inside the building, the hallways themselves are pretty tight, and the stairs present an issue to those who can't use steps. That visibility piece really stood out to us, which directly impacted most of the outreach-focused goals in our action plan.
Following the interview, we developed and distributed a 10-question needs assessment survey using an online platform and a QR code with flyers distributed across campus, as well as asking the Resource Center to post the QR code and link on their social media, and they even included it in their monthly letter that they email out to people. The goal of this survey was to better understand how students experience the center and to identify both strengths and gaps in its services.
Yeah, we had a total of 17 participants who responded to our needs assessment survey. Most respondents were students, especially those who are already connected to the center, which is something that we kept in mind when interpreting the data.
Our findings showed that the top priorities for participation included a stronger sense of belonging and community, access to a safe and welcoming physical space, and opportunities for advocacy and social justice engagement.
One of the most important findings was that 64.7% of participants identified belonging as a top need, while 17.7% reported scheduling barriers and uncertainty about whether the center was for them. We also saw that students are most often finding out about the center through their friends, which really highlights how powerful word of mouth and community connections are, even more than formal outreach through social media.
Quantitative data indicated that the center is generally meeting students' needs with an average range of 3.76 and an even stronger impact on fostering inclusion and belonging with an average range of 4.53 out of 5. However, we also identified several key barriers to engagement. These included scheduling conflicts, uncertainty about whether services were relevant, lack of awareness, confusion about available services, and concerns about privacy.
The qualitative responses added even more depth, especially around representation and inclusivity, particularly for trans students.
These findings suggest that while the center is effective for those who engage in it, there are still barriers preventing broader access and utilization.
This also shows up in what resources the students are actually using. So they are taking advantage of things like social events, student groups, and the physical space itself. Those were the most common responses to our survey. What we found interesting is that the top needs weren't necessarily new services, but more about connection. So, truly feeling a sense of belonging and having a safe space. That really reinforces the role that the center is not just a resource, but an actual community.
Okay, so based on these findings, we developed an action plan focused on three primary areas: increasing awareness, improving accessibility, and strengthening belonging and representation. Our approach is grounded in counseling informed interventions, particularly motivational interviewing and person centered methods. This means prioritizing empathy, collaboration, and low pressure engagement when interacting with students and gathering feedback.
So we developed some short-term and long-term goals. For the short-term goals, our first short-term goal focuses on increasing student awareness of the center and its services. This will be achieved through targeted outreach strategies, including peer-to-peer promotion, increased social media engagement, and expanding physical marketing across campus and local LGBTQ plus affirming spaces. The second goal addresses scheduling barriers by piloting one consistent evening or nighttime event each week with extended hours, allowing students with conflicting schedules greater access to the center. That way, it works with people who might have later afternoon or night classes. The third goal focuses on increasing low pressure engagement opportunities. This includes hosting casual drop in events such as game night or informal gatherings that don't require prior registration or identity disclosure. These events are designed to reduce intimidation and encourage first time participation.
Like, it makes such a difference when you actually go inside a building and you realize how cool it is and how you can use it. But, like, until you step foot in it, it's really hard to know who it's for, or if you're like an outsider coming in the safe space, even if you identify as queer or as an ally. So I think it's really important for Boxwood House to get students through the door so that they can realize, like, oh, there's a bunch of resources here that I can utilize and I can feel comfortable and safe here, that this place is for me.
And for our long term goals, they focus on strengthening belonging and representation. So, again, this is the overarching mission of the center that was emphasized both by Christine Price, the director, and Jerry Shearer. It is like the number one statement on their Kutztown like landing page, and something that really speaks to the folks that run the space. So, one goal that we had is to reduce reports of lack of representation, particularly among trans and gender diverse students, through targeted programming and advocacy efforts. So, again, if one of the center's main missions is to increase belonging and representation, we want to make sure that everyone feels that way. Our long-term goal is to reduce that feeling of a lack of representation. Another goal is to increase overall belonging scores by expanding community building initiatives, such as peer mentorship programs and partnerships with local LGBTQ+ organizations. Our final long-term goal focuses on enhancing holistic support by increasing collaboration with other campus organizations. This includes co-hosting programming related to mental health, identity development, and community engagement. I feel like this one to me seems like a very simple and effective way to get the word across about the center because we're all in night classes, we all have professors, or we're GAs, or we're doing different things on campus. So the more folks that are talking about the center and what it offers, the better chance it has to include more people.
And I believe one of the previously offered supports that they had was they were working with Safe, and unfortunately, they no longer have that additional mental health support. So that could really benefit them. All right, so how are we going to monitor this? So we do have an evaluation plan as well. To evaluate the effectiveness of these interventions, we would use a mixed methods approach. This includes collecting data at multiple time points, so before, during, and after implementation of these goals, to assess changes in awareness, engagement, and sense of belonging. We'll track attendance at events, gathering informal feedback through conversation and suggestion forms, and analyze social media engagement. A follow-up needs assessment would also be conducted to compare results over time.
LGBTQ+ college students experience higher rates of mental health concerns and are less likely to access services when barriers exist. Our interventions directly address these barriers by increasing clarity, reducing pressure, and improving visibility.
So, research really supports this approach. For example, research from the Trevor Project shows that affirming and accessible resources are linked to improved well being and increased help seeking behaviors among LGBTQ youth. Additionally, Cole et al. Highlight how motivational interviewing supports collaborative and low pressure engagement, which can increase participation. In terms of ethical and cultural considerations, something we were really mindful of is making sure that everything remains voluntary and respects privacy, especially since not all students feel safe being open about their identity. We also considered the diversity within the LGBTQ plus community. So not everyone has the same experience, and it's really important that the programming reflects a range of identities and perspectives.
Overall, one of the biggest strengths of this project was the integration of multiple sources of data, including the supervisor interview and the needs assessment. This allowed us to create an action plan that's grounded in both professional insight and student experiences. Additionally, this project highlighted how counseling skills such as empathy, active listening, and cultural responsiveness can be applied beyond clinical settings and into program evaluation and development. One limitation of this project was the relatively small sample size of our survey, which limits the generalizability of our findings. There's also the possibility of self-selection bias, as participants who chose to respond may already be more engaged with the center. Another important consideration is our positionality as researchers. As graduate students who are not actively embedded in the center, our privilege and limited rapport with participants may have influenced both how the data was collected and how it was interpreted. Another limitation of this study was the low response rate, which presents a threat to validity. Because the survey was distributed through QR codes and passive outreach methods, we're unable to determine how many individuals actually saw the survey compared to how many responded. This makes it difficult to accurately calculate a response rate and limits our ability to generalize the findings. In future, response rates could be improved by incorporating more direct and intentional recruitment strategies. such as in-person outreach, classroom announcements, or structured distribution through facility and campus organizations. Additionally, sending follow-up reminders and offering more structured incentives could increase participation. These strategies would allow for a more representative sample and strengthen the overall validity of the findings. If we were to improve this project, we would aim to increase participation in the needs assessment, potentially through additional outreach methods or longer data collection periods. We would also explore ways to incorporate more direct collaboration with students throughout the evaluation process.
And to insert a little real talk into this section, I feel like all of us as students did the best that we could with the timing of this project. And I am personally pretty surprised by the amount of information we were able to gather in such a limited amount of time, which, again, I recognize isn't all that impressive when I wanted a much higher response rate according to what our textbook defined as an appropriate amount. However, I feel like it was a successful experience in that I got to collect data and have the ability to analyze it. But I really do feel like I wish there was a better way to have had more time to do this research so that we would have had a higher response rate. And I also, me personally, I'm sure Sarah feels the same way. I feel like I would love to have had more confidence as well in the data that we collected. So if I could do this project all over again, I wished we could have started in January. For data's sake, not for our workload's sake, but
being able to have more time to collect data, being able to check in, do more outreach, send out more announcements, notifications. That way we're getting people at different periods of the term as well. You know, whether it's people who are just starting in the spring, or maybe people who it's their last spring and their last term. And I think that would also show a wider variety of how people engage with the center is, you know, are they engaging more their freshman year, their senior year, their graduate years? And how has it helped them throughout their time at the university?
that's such a good perspective too. I didn't even think about the fact that this is spring semester. And if I am ready to graduate, I feel like my utilization of services is impacted by that. And so I love that you highlighted the fact that the time of the year in which we conducted this study also affects the findings. Good point, Sarah. All right, well, that leads us to our closing. So, in conclusion, this program evaluation highlights the strong impact of the LGBTQ Resource Center at Kutztown University while identifying meaningful opportunities to expand awareness, accessibility, and inclusivity. Our action plan provides a structured and evidence-based approach to addressing these needs and supporting continued growth within the center.
Overall, our plan is about making the center more accessible, more visible, and more reflective of the students it serves.
I love that Dr. Cooper acknowledged the realistic nature of the action plan. And I feel like for us to have effective, sustainable change for the center so that it could have a bigger impact, it's easier for them to have smaller steps to take that are within their means and budget for them to integrate that into their programming. This project highlights how program evaluation can serve as a form of advocacy by identifying gaps and improving access for underserved populations such as the queer community. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope you enjoy all of the other incredible videos that you are in the process of watching.
Thank you so much for listening to our presentation, checking it out, and if you have time, if this is not your last semester, go check out Boxwood House and all the services they offer.